Alright, hey guys, Paxer, welcome back to another Pokemon Pocket video. In this video, we're going to be going over meta decks from tournaments this past week, and I feel like this is probably the best time to look at tournaments because keep in mind, from the time I'm uploading this video, rank should be coming in relatively less than a week. The rank season for B1 will be coming out on November 27th up until December 14th. Rather short, and with that being said, rank will definitely be a sweatfest, and because of that, watching this video will help you out tremendously. Just looking at the meta, seeing how it evolved through the past weeks, and if you guys are new to my channel, I really do consider if you like and subscribe. Really does help me out tremendously, especially as a small-time content creator. And without further ado, let's get right into the weekly meta report. So if you guys are new to the format of these types of videos, how this usually goes, I'm pretty much going to be reviewing 2 tournaments, going over a couple decks from each, and then at the end of the video, I'm going to be using one of them in PvP to see how it performs. So yeah, the first tournament we're going to be going over is the Pocket Mats tournament number 8, has a player count of 747 players. This is the winner right here. Yeah, so for the winner, we have a non-EX deck, Magnezone Oricorio. Very nice to see how consistent this deck is. Even in this meta, it just has always been rather consistent, which is pretty nice. And looking at the other decks, Hydreigon, Mega Absol, an amazing combo. Hydreigon essentially very similar to Rampardos, debatably better, but it really depends on the deck you're using, of course. But yeah, very similar nevertheless. We also have Mega Altaria Indeedee, amazing pairing because Indeedee is a good support, also good at attacking Pokemon with a lot of energy attached, as well as Mega Altaria. Just in my opinion, Mega Altaria is pretty much essentially the stage 1 equivalent of Pikachu Ex from Genetic Apex because they act rather similar. You want to get your backline built. Suicune, Greninja. This is the EX though. The EX is in this deck, which is, yeah, I mean, it just constantly evolves. Last month without the EX, now we have the EX. So if you're tired of Suicune Greninja, just the love pairing right here, then yeah, they're gonna be here for the foreseeable future. And I got Nadal, Blaziken, Heatmor, amazing combo. I went over some of these decks in my previous meta report, so if you guys are curious, I went over Heatmor, Blaziken. But for the sake of time, I'm just going to be reviewing 2 decks from each tournament. Also, if you guys are curious, the link to these tournaments will be in the description below if you just want to look at the decks. But yeah, just going to go over the first place winner right here, Mono Outlaw, Magnezone Oricorio. Let's check this out. So this is a deck right here. All right. So yeah, this is very straightforward. Non-EX Chingling, amazing early game. Just disrupting your opponent, because if you start attacking with Chingling, especially in your first turn, you're just getting a lot of value because Chingling, of course, if you guys don't know, if you guys are new to this baby Pokemon, debatably the best baby Pokemon from this this set. I think it's the only one, unless there's another one that got forgotten, but you only do 10 damage, but after attacking during your opponent's next turn, they can't play any item cards from their hand. So this, especially if you go first, could disrupt your opponent a lot, especially since of course they can't use Pokeballs later on in a couple turns. Let's say like you do go second, if you use Chingling, it makes it so your opponent's next turn they can't use Rare Candy, and Rare Candies are huge. Yeah, just like overall it will always be huge in my opinion, unless they add like a super hard counter or power creep to said item. But yeah, overall amazing disruption. And also it's a baby Pokemon, so if you go second, you can just start feeding either Oricorio or even Magnezone. I mean, granted, Magnezone doesn't really need to get fed that much, but if anything, depending on your situation, feeding Magneton that extra lightning energy will make it so that it can use spinning attack. And it really depends on the scenario. That spinning attack could help you out a lot. But at the same time, Magneton is just such an amazing stage 1 because of course, Volt Charge. I mean, you guys probably know about Volt Charge. This card has been out in the game ever since the game came out. So yeah, I feel like everybody really knows Magneton. I feel like this is the one exception where like you don't want to use Rare Candies. When it comes to stage 2, getting Magnezone out, you never want to get Rare Candies out unless, I mean, it could still work. Don't get me wrong, but at the same time, I mean, I feel like you're just getting so much value with Magneton. This deck isn't running Elemental Switch. I know a lot of people like pairing Magneton with that item card, getting a lot of value. I mean, just, yeah, Magneton essentially kind of like an energy support with Volt Charge. But yeah, this deck is very straightforward. Good disruption with Oricorio as well. Oricorio getting a lot of value, especially with a lot of Mega EXs out there. We shall see in the matches. I'm pretty sure this person went through a lot that, yeah, Mega Absol, a lot of EXs, essentially all the decks had at least one EX. So you're getting huge value with Oricorio. Giant Cape as well, just in case you want a Giant Cape Oricorio, because keep in mind, there are certain cards like non-EX Decidueye that can just absolutely just one-shot Oricorio. But yeah, very straightforward. Ideally, what you want to do is lead with Chingling, and then eventually sub in either Magnezone or Oricorio, and just play from there, pretty much. You can just be very just chill, because it's a non-EX deck, so unlike EXs, and especially Megas, it's less risky. Like, you can just take your time, just focus on chipping your opponent's Pokemon, especially if they have like a Mega. And that's why, of course, we have Cyrus, just in case your opponent tries to retreat from said Mega Pokemon, getting some pretty good value. Copycat as well. So yeah, you're basically gonna be outdrawing your opponent, getting a lot of value, especially if your opponent has a lot of cards in their hand. And then let's say like after copycatting, you draw a red card. Use red card, disrupting your opponent, making so that they have to draw cards yet again. An overall nasty combo because you're benefiting from how many cards they have and then just messing them up. Also, PC Ladies here, amazing, especially if you're going against a type of burn deck. Especially, let's say like, what's his name? Mega Blaziken EX does burn damage. Doesn't do any physical damage to Oricorio like attack damage, but status effect damage, yeah. And to counteract that, PC Ladies right here. So like you're just not only healing health, but also removing the status condition. Very much, I feel like the essence of lightning decks. Because lightning decks are just very fast paced. And from the looks of this, you really do want to just outspeed your opponent. Just get built relatively fast. Get ideally just one Chingling and possibly 2 Magnezones out. And just like bully your opponent essentially. So it's a lot of fun. And again, non-EX is always very nice to see. And looking at the matches right here. Lost 2. Lost against Mega Altaria. Interesting. Which, I mean, kind of makes sense. Let's look at this one right here. This is the Mega Altaria deck right here. Very straightforward. Got 2 Chinglings, so already very disruptive. But looking at this deck, we only have 3 item cards. Okay. So not really, your opponent's not really getting that much value with Chingling. But again, I mean, Pokeballs, not being able to Pokeball your first or second turn could end up losing you the game. Especially since, yeah, how fast-paced this game is. And on top of this deck is very fast-paced as well. So Jirachi, able to chip your opponent's backline. So that's, yeah. Also Sableye right here. An amazing counter to Oricorio, which might have happened. Again, it's ultimately up to RNG. It's really hard to tell like how this guy actually won. But Sableye is primarily in this deck to pretty much counteract Oricorio, doing 70 damage. And looking at Oricorio, yeah. Granted, you do have Giant Capes, but I mean, depending on RNG, you might not be able to pull that Giant Cape, so that might have happened like that. Mega Altaria is an absolute monster, able to one-shot most cards in this deck. Aside from, of course, Magnezone. For Magnezone, Mega Altaria will 2-hit KO, but nevertheless, this deck is very disruptive. You got Guzmas as well. Guzma, so even if you Giant Cape, your opponent can just Guzma, Sableye, and it's just done for your Oricorio. So that's what might have happened. And also, Rocky Helmet is very toxic, because looking at this, let's say you do Giant Cape your Magnezone, Guzma, Rocky Helmet, Mega Altaria combo, it will make it so that Mega Altaria can just one-shot, because yeah, you Guzma, Magnezone will be at 140 HP. If you attack with Magnezone, it's going to be at 120. And with that being said, Mega Altaria can just one-shot. So yeah, this deck is a lot of fun. Like, if you want a very fast-paced Psychic deck, I would invest in this. Like, yeah, just when it comes to just having fun, I just have a lot of fun using this deck. Like, I can't emphasize that enough. It's very good, and also in ranked and also in tournaments, as you can see, it is kind of top performing. Let's see. So number 4th, the Mega Altaria EX Indeedee was number 4. Keep that in mind. And in this deck, first I only got to top 32, which is pretty unfortunate, but nevertheless, again, it's very fun. Yeah, next deck I'll be going over is definitely the Indeedee deck, because that is, it might be more consistent, especially with the heal, but we shall see. But going back to Magnezone Oricorio, yeah, lost to Mega Altaria. Second loss was against Mega Altaria Indeedee. And overall, just securing the dub. Beating Mega Hydreigon Absol. Might as well just quickly look at this as well. So this is the Mega Absol Hydreigon deck. Very straightforward. You do want to lead with Chingling and then Hydreigon and then maybe lead into Mega Absol. It really depends on the scenario of the game. I feel like sometimes Mega Absol might be a liability, especially if your opponent is very good at chipping the backline. So that's something to kind of note. Not really gonna go in depth with this, but again, the link to the tournament will be in the description below if you want to look at this a lot more. But yeah, Mega Absol is good and all, but I feel like it might get power crept eventually, because being a basic with 170 HP, depending on how the meta shifts, like if it shifts more in like chipping, like with Greninja's non-EX Greninja's ability, as well as the Decidueyes, if they focus on chipping the backline, then you might be in trouble. Like, Mega Absol is good, especially with removing supporter cards, but it's very situational. And again, it might just lose you the game. Also, looking at this, it kind of makes sense why this deck won. Yeah, because of course, Chingling. Only one copy, but if you get Chingling out, it makes it so your opponent can't get Hydreigon. essentially. And then in a couple turns, you could also red just to mess up your opponent even more. So you're getting some pretty good value while also doing a decent amount of damage. 110 damage, still pretty good. You can 2-hit KO a lot. And it's not, again, it's not as much risk as other, of course, EXs because it's a non-EX. And yeah, that's the Magnezone Oricorio deck. Next deck we're going to be going over, as I stated earlier, Mega Altaria, Indeedee. Nice, interesting. So instead of, let's see, do I still have it? Yeah, right here. Just put this together. So instead of Sableye, this deck has the non-EX Altaria. Duda Wave, it sounds like that guy, kind of reminds me of that one guy from Shrek. If you guys remember the Duda War Kid, that's essentially what this Altaria is. So yeah, this Altaria, non-EX, pretty interesting. I saw pairings with this a couple months ago with Silvally. So of course, HP 100, colorless, which is very interesting. Duda Wave, 20 base damage. This attack does 20 more damage for each of your bench Pokemon. Actually, never mind. My bad. So that's a different Altaria. I was talking about this Altaria if you guys are curious. Very similar to Silvally, so very interesting pairing to pair those two. But this one is for Mega Rising, a new card as well. So in total, you can do 80 damage with this, which is pretty good. Very nice, and again, can just one-shot Oricorios. Not if they Giant Cave, but let me look at the deck. What else does this have? No Guzma, but we do have Rocky Helmet. So can do some very nasty damage with that. Indeedee as well. Amazing supporter EX, and also again attacking wise very situational, but can just deal a ton of damage. So this is the card, HP 130 basic ability, watch over. Once during your turn you may heal 20 damage from your active Pokemon. So an amazing healing ability. Has one attack, psychic, 30 base damage, and this attack does 30 more damage for each energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. In other words, if you're going against something like, let's say, Giratina EX is fully built, you are doing 150 damage to that Pokemon. And when it comes to Darkrai EX, you are doing 120. So yeah, substantial amount of damage. But again, ideally for this deck, you do want to kind of lead with Chinglings. Actually, this is the wrong one. Yeah, this deck, you want to lead with Chinglings and eventually sub in Mega Altaria and just have Indeedee as a support, which is why we're only running one copy. Makes sense. Also, Jirachi is amazing because if you guys don't know, Jirachi, Star Drop requires 1 energy. This attack does 30 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon. Can be active or the bench. In other words, this means a lot because Magikarp, if you think about Gyarados, Mega Gyarados, there's this Magikarp. All the Magikarps have 30 HP. In other words, Mega Gyarados is just screwed, man. I feel like, man, this deck, this meta really treated Mega Gyarados very poorly. Like, yeah, I've said this before, but it is really depressing. If you're a Mega Gyarados fan, then it's really sad because I feel like there's a lot of cards in this meta that just hard counter that card. And yeah, especially since it's so hard to build up. Requires a bit of luck. I mean, you could just Misty and just get insane luck. Because ideally for Mega Gyarados, you do want to kind of get out as fast as possible to maximize the attack ability. But kind of digressing, just something to note that like Mega Gyarados is just kind of screwed at this point. We shall see in next month, if anything, because I feel like this month is definitely not going to be that good. Like, looking at this tournament, I might as well just look at it. Just out of curiosity, yeah, dude, there are no Mega Gyaradoses. I don't really see any Gyarados or any Gyarados, even a single one. So, yeah, that's pretty rough. But yeah, looking at this deck coming back to here. So yeah, ideally, you want to lead with Shingling, then eventually sub in Mega Altaria, and just sweep. Doing 130 damage if your board is max. If you have... If your board is full, and we have 2 Cyruses, meaning that your opponent just can't escape, essentially. This makes it so that your opponent, let's say your opponent tries to retreat like twice, guess what? You have 2 Cyruses, and we also have Mars, so let's say you do get kind of unlucky, and you get Indeedee EX out in your active. After that Pokemon gets out, or gets knocked out, you could Mars, getting max value with Mars. So yeah, there's something to note right there. Red, so... amazing pairing with Mega Altaria, doing 150 damage, and of course looking at Indeedee like paired with red. It depends on the situation, but again, going against Giratina EX, a fully built Giratina EX, 170 damage paired with red, a lot of value. Lucia, just two Lucias, interesting. Essentially, okay, 2 Lucias, 2 Pokeballs. This could be a lot better than Pokeball, depending on your opponent, because again, Shingling disrupts, makes it so that your opponent can't use item cards, or like if you're going against a Shingling, you can't use item cards. But Lucia isn't an item, so yeah, she's a supporter. And if you guys don't know, this card is essentially a better version of Pokeball. Debatably, I mean, it depends on the basics, I guess. So As you can see right here, put 2 random basic Pokemon with 50 HP or less from your deck into your hand. And then looking at this deck, let's see, basics, we got Chingling, Swablu, and Indeedee. Indeedee is a basic higher than the 50 HP threshold. And it makes sense because, again, Indeedee, you ideally, I feel like this card is kind of optional, in my opinion. Like, you don't necessarily need to have this card on the field or in the game to be effective because, of course, kind of acting more of a support. And could be a liability, especially later on, depending on your opponent's deck. If they're using like the Decidueye, prioritizing this like chipping the backline, could mess you up. But overall, a very well-rounded deck. I feel like this deck, it just feels so fast-paced. Because again, Chingling is basic as a baby, so you can just lead with Altaria. Just start feeding Altaria. And Altaria, in and of itself, is like not that hard to feed. If you go second, your second turn, you can just start attacking with Altaria. Either Altarias. So just something to keep in mind. Just very fast-paced. And again, as I stated earlier, essentially the stage 1 version of Pikachu. And yeah, that's the Mega Altaria deck. Looking at the battles, lost 3 times. Okay, so lost against, Mega Blaziken, Magnezone, Oricorio. Makes sense since this deck is running Magnezone, and Magnezone is a non-EX. Mega Altaria EX will be 2-hit KOing the Magnezone. So, and that's a non-EX. So yeah, your opponent can just like, it'll take you like 2 turns to destroy this Magnezone. Next turn, depending on RNG, your opponent can just sub in another Magnezone and just one-shot you. Just getting a lot of value. Something to note, of course, if you guys don't know, probably know, kind of obvious, but since Mega Altaria EX is a Mega Pokemon, once this Pokemon gets knocked out, your opponent wins. It's an instant win. So yeah, I can see why this deck lost to Magnezone Oricorio. Also, Oricorio, the Nightmare Bird, this is a huge wall against EXs, so you kind of have to pivot with Altaria. Chingling can also destroy Oricorio, but it's gonna take 7 turns at least. So I mean, could be a situation, but very, 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 very unlikely. And of course, lost to Blaziken Heatmor. If you guys want, you can just pause to look at this deck. But I can see how this deck won because, of course, Heatmor does target bench Pokemon. So depending on your RNG, depending on how you get built, let's say like Mega Altaria EX is in your bench, your opponent can just Cyrus. 2 Cyruses. So yeah, just messing you up, just start beating up the Mega Altaria, that bird, just getting beat up by either Heatmor, or actually no, not Heatmor, Blaziken. And then yeah, it's GG. There's really nothing you could do. So I can see why this deck won. And ultimately, this deck's final loss was against Mega Absol Hydreigon. Makes a lot of sense. I mean, yeah, just looking at it, I mean, kind of an interesting win. Let me just look at this deck. So this is the deck right here. Because on paper, I feel like the Mega Altaria deck should have won, but again, it's ultimately up to RNG. You could be using the most broken deck and just still lose because of RNG. Yeah, there's been a lot of times where like I just needed to pull my stage 2s, and of course my stage 2 Pokemon were just in the very bottom of the deck, so I couldn't really do anything. So yeah, this is the deck that this deck ultimately lost to. Looking at it on paper, this deck is very disruptive. It should have won because, of course, Chingling is amazing, disrupting your opponent, making so that they can't pull out Hydreigon. There's also Mars for extra disruption. So this deck should have won on paper, but Mega Altaria still took the W. It's insane. Also running an Absol, again, just kind of poking the bench. And further adding to my point that, like, Mega Gyarados is screwed. Because Absol, if you guys don't know, Leap Over, just attack does 30 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. Magikarp is just free game, dude. Essentially a free point. It really is sad. Like, yeah, they really gotta add a buffer. Add a Magikarp EX that like has more HP or something. Kind of like very similar. You should make a Magikarp EX that's very similar, if not better, than EVEX. So you can still evolve, but it comes with a bit more perks. They definitely should add that, but yeah, because now it's kind of dead. Like, it's rather rough. Not really worth running, but yeah, looking at this, I'm assuming it's really up to the starting hand, because if you can't pull 2 Chinglings, let's say like you pulled an Indeedee and then like, I don't know, Swablus, then I feel like your opponent will get a pretty good lead, especially if they get the cards they need. Just getting Hydreigon out their second turn could happen. So yeah, but on paper, I feel like this deck should have won. I feel like more likely than not, you would win using this deck against this deck. Only went against Mega Absol and Hydreigon twice. And first time won, second time lost. So something to keep in mind. But overall, still a very fun deck. Amazing heals, is fast-paced damage, and also disruption. I feel like this deck has everything that you kind of want. And yeah, that's the Mega Altaria Indeedee deck. Those are all the decks that we'll be going over in this specific tournament. Overall, looks very diverse. Again, I really do like this meta overall because we got Magnezone Oricorio taking first place. Doesn't really look that popular, especially in the top 10. Yeah, only one copy in top 10 of Magnezone Oricorio. And looking at it, very diverse. You got Absol, Blaziken, Altaria, just a lot of stuff, a lot of contenders. Guzzler is even here with Naganadel. That's very interesting. So yeah, really am liking this so far. And next tournament we're going to be going over is the Pocket Legends League, number 44. Okay, a bit of a contrast. This is why I like looking at multiple tournaments. Look at this. So top 5 here, very diverse. We got two Altarias, Absols, I guess. But yeah, Magnezone takes the top place. But looking at this, Suicune Greninja, Suicune Greninja. This tournament is plagued with this duo, which is, yeah, very interesting. But it kind of shows that, I mean, if you're, for one thing, I mean, a lot of people are sick of this combo. But at the same time, this kind of shows that you could just kind of invest in a deck and see long-term investments. Yeah, I mean, of course, Giratina is a good example of that. Granted, I mean, I feel like in this meta, you won't get much value. Let me see. Is there any... I don't really see any Darktinas here. Very unfortunate. We got Darkrai Absol, but no Darktinas. Yeah, it looks like they kind of broke up. Very sad. They were a very iconic duo, but now the iconic duo, the notorious duo, is Suicune Greninja EX. Just them, and then also, I'm assuming this one also runs a non-EX as well, because that card still gets a lot of value even to this day. First place, enough said, Suicune Greninja, made by Dachoso, SVK Dachoso. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. Yeah, very interesting. I made a very similar deck showcase to this. If you guys are curious, if I remember, it's going to be in the top right. Just click on that if you guys are curious. If anything, just look it up on my channel. Very similar, but for that deck showcase, I did run 2 copies of EX Greninja and then 1 copy of non-EX because, of course, for that deck showcase, I wanted to focus primarily on Greninja EX, getting a lot of value. Very similar to the previous decks. If anything, in the previous months, the Suicune Greninja decks, they would include Giratina EX. Giratina EX is pretty good just like as a wall. However, as you can see, instead of Giratina, we have Greninja. And this card, if you guys don't know, is a very interesting card. Essentially a water style Steela, but better. So HP 170, stage 2. Ability Shifting Stream. Once during your turn, you may switch your active water Pokemon with one of your bench Pokemon. And keep in mind, this can apply to Greninja or just any water Pokemon. So let's say like, depending on the scenario, let's just pull up the deck. So let's say this Greninja EX is in your bench. Suicune EX is in the active, about to die, and let's say for whatever reason you want to sub in the non-EX one, you have one non-EX one as well in the bench. You can just use Greninja EX's ability to sub in this Greninja with Suicune. And on top of that, Aqua Edge only requires 2 energy, does 100 damage. So for my Suicune EX deck showcase, I was essentially leading with Suicune. Not really feeding Suicune. I mean, it really depends on the matchup because in some cases, either Greninjas might get more value than said Suicune. Decks such as Heatmor and Mega Blaziken EX. Ideally for that deck, your opponent will most likely have 1 bench Pokemon in their bench. Ideally for that deck, your opponent will most likely have only 1 bench Pokemon. And of course for Suicune EX, you want both players' benches is fully built to do max 120 damage. 140, of course, paired with Greninja. So yeah, especially in this meta, there's gonna be a lot of scenarios where you won't really get much value. I mean, if you're going against like something like Mega Altaria, of course, yeah. But coming back to my main point, there's gonna be situations where you would want to sub in this Greninja EX. To sub him in, and again, only requires 2 energy, doing flat 100 damage, 120 paired with Greninja. 120 max, I mean, Suicune EX paired with Greninja will be doing more damage. But again, this card it's not variable. It's not situational, like you're just doing flat 100 damage, whereas of course Suicune EX depends on how many Pokemon are out on the field. And with that being said, yeah, very straightforward. I mean, Suicune, I mean, ideally still, for this deck, you want to kind of lead with Suicune to get that, to maximize just drawing cards. And this is very interesting. So this deck is running a Copycat. Very good, especially if your opponent does end up red carding you. This kind of a counter to red card to Cyruses. So again, this is an amazing combo. Greninja Cyrus combo is still pretty huge and will always kind of be huge. Mars as well. So let's say like your Suicune EX does get knocked out. You can just Mars, sub in Greninja EX, and just sweep from there. Yeah, something to note is that Greninja EX is rather tanky, 170 HP. We also have 2 Aritas. You could run Lilies, but yeah, Arita is still pretty good overall because you're just buffing your Suicune EX as well. But yeah, Marsing towards the middle to late game could get you a ton of value. I've definitely won battles because of Mars. So like there's been a lot of situations where like I would just like get knocked out, and I know my opponent has like a Cyrus or a Sabrina something, a win condition in their hand. I could just feel it, and I Mars, and they lose that, and I just sweep them, and it's very infuriating to your opponent because I mean like they could have just won, but you just Mars, and then at that point, I mean it's really up to RNG. They could just instantly top deck their win condition, but most likely depending on how many cards they have, they won't. And yeah, overall a ton of fun to use, man. Suicune Ex really did revive water type. Like, yeah, I mean Primarina tried, but it wasn't really, even with how that Pokemon wasn't really that strong. Absolutely amazing. I feel like if it weren't for the ability, this card would have just been forgotten. Like, yeah, if they added something else, like let's say like energy support or something else aside from like just drawing cards, I feel like it won't be as strong as what it is right now. Like, yeah, just huge value overall. And then looking at the matches, lost twice against, wow, coincidentally enough, Suicune Greninjas. Again, if you're tired of Suicune Greninja, it's not over yet. They're staying. They're staying for quite a while, especially since, again, Mega Gyarados is rather a disappointment. Yeah, so that's number 1. The last deck that we will be going over is number 9th place, Mega Blaziken EX Heatmor. I did go over this in my previous meta report, but I might as well go over it yet again if you guys haven't watched that, especially since this deck is still rather consistent. And then coming back to the Pokémon tournament, got to 8th place. So yeah, still very good and very viable in the meta. So yeah, Mega Blaziken made by Imp, TR Ob AUB. Yep. Just take a look at this. So very straightforward. Again, I kind of went over it already. Just kind of slightly reiterate, maybe explain a little bit more. But yeah, ideally lead with Heatmor and eventually sub into Mega Blaziken. The main downside is that Mega Blaziken is an EX. So if you're going against something like, let's say like if your opponent has like 2 Oricorios, you might be screwed, especially if they do have PC Lady being able to heal that burnt damage, of course. Heatmor, keep in mind, Heatmor only does damage to the bench. So if your opponent has an Oricorio in the active, this Heatmor can't do anything to that Oricorio. There might be a certain situation where like you kind of want to lead with Combusken and attack with this card in order to counteract that Oricorio. But at the same time, you're still going to be 2-hit KOing. If your opponent's running 2 of them, 2 copies, you're basically screwed. There's really nothing you can do to counteract that. We shall see in the matches. I'm pretty sure this deck went up against an Oricorio, I think. Looking at the matches, this is Victreebel Chingling. That's a thing. Just look at it out of curiosity. Nice. We got Celebi as well. Okay, yeah, Celebi's potential nightmare. This card also, Celebi also hard counters Mega Gyarados. Keep that in mind. Yet again, another reason why not to run Mega Gyarados. It's so sad, man. But yeah, very interesting. Not running into Magnezone Oricorio deck, but we do have a Jolteon Oricorio. 1 against this guy. That is interesting. Running 2 Oricorios, no PC Ladies though. That's very nice. Also, Jolteon EX prioritizes than just doing chip damage. With that, especially with the ability, you might not be getting that much value with Jolteon EX. I'm assuming for this deck, it was primarily up to RNG, and then this deck kind of just outsped this deck. And also with the Oricorios, again, since there's no PC Lady, the Oricorios will be getting burned. And on top of that, Rocky Helmet as well. So you could potentially do 40 damage in a turn because of burnt damage as well as Rocky Helmet. I actually run a very similar deck to this, but I do run Pikachu EX. I feel like this deck might have been better if the person did run Pikachu EX. I'm just going to pull up right here. So this Pikachu from Shining Revelry, a rather good nuke, doing 150 damage, which is pretty nice. And depending on your opponent's matchup, you could just win you the game. Like, let's say like you're going up against like Suicune EX. Yeah, just completely one-shotting, as well as Greninja EX. Because of type advantage, doing 170, and Greninja EX has 170 HP. So yeah, overall, I feel like this Pikachu, kind of a glass cannon, however, could be your win condition, especially towards the late game. Yeah, it's pretty rough. I mean, just looking at this, you would think that running 2 Oricorios would just be a nightmare even up against Mega Blaziken, but nope. Mega Blaziken just push through. And yeah, that's a Pocket Legends League number 44 tournament. Overall, I kind of like this tournament a lot more. Granted, I mean, looking at the player count, Pocket Mads has twice the amount of players, so yeah, just something to note. But overall, I'm kind of sad because if you watch my previous weekly meta report, there was one contender that was huge that I think they won first place. It was the Decidueye deck. The Decidueye was just huge in that tournament last week, like this tournament from last week. But then now looking at this, like, where are the Decidueyes right here? Okay, number 32. And then over here, number 24. So very poor performance compared to the previous week. And it kind of makes sense. I mean, for one thing, yeah, Mega Blaziken EX is a hard counter to the Decidueye in my opinion, especially with the type advantage. And if I remember correctly, the Decidueye player from the previous week's tournament, I don't think they went up against a Mega Blaziken. So, I mean, there's probably like a what if scenario. Like, I feel like if they did go up against Mega Blaziken, it's going to be more likely that they would have lost. But nevertheless, I mean, they got very lucky with their matchups, I guess. But yeah, those are the tournaments. If you guys are curious, this is the Decidueye deck. The deck I used was rather similar. I don't think the Chinglings were present. And yeah, that was the weekly meta report. To finish the video off, I'm going to be using this deck in PvP, and we'll see how it performs. All right, here we are in PvP battle. Interesting. Going first, leading with Chingling. Again, getting a lot of value. Might as well play it like this. Okay, very interesting deck. We're going against a Snivy Petilil deck. This guy might be running Celebi. This might be a Celebi deck. And if anything, that's pretty good because, again, Oricorio is a huge wall. But again, I mean, this guy could lead with Superior eventually. But for now, very straightforward, just Jingly Noise. Okay, opponent just attacks with Petilil. So basically negating the damage I just did. But it doesn't matter because, yeah, the main draw for Chingling, of course, is the attack ability. Lead with Chingling, eventually sub into Oricorio, and then finish it off with Magnezone. So, yeah, very straightforward. Let's do this. At this point, I might as well... Why not? I'm just going to Giant Cape. We do have another Giant Cape in our deck, so if they do... My opponent does Guzma, then I can just place another one in a couple turns. But yeah, Jingly Noise, again, messing them up. I mean, my opponent very much could have a Superior and a Snivy, or not Snivy, Rare Candy in their hand, but they can't use it because of Chingling. Right, as I was talking, evolves into Servine. Okay. Okay. At this point, I can just be super aggressive with Oricorio. I might as well. So, yeah, Magnezone. I could PC Lady this Chingling, but I feel like the safer bet's to save it for later on. For now, if anything, I'm just gonna do this. Yeah, just retreat into Oricorio and just be super aggressive. Just beating up this Petilil. And then next turn, if I want, I could just sub into Magnezone and just be super aggressive. All right, I'm just lost. I have no idea what this person's running. Oh, yeah. Again, this battle at the end of the video, we're not really looking at my opponent's deck, more so just how fast-paced this deck can be. And I feel like this is very straightforward. This is ideally the playstyle you want to go for. This person's essentially just giving us the win. This is a rookie mistake here. Do not evolve into Magnezone just yet. Of course, you want to use Magneton's ability first. Yeah, it's basically GG. There's really nothing my opponent can do. Just do this. Next turn, I can just Cyrus, Petilil, GG. Yeah, these are the type of decks that you will be going up against if you're in casual battle. This is why I kind of misranked. But also, I mean, this is something to note as well. Because for my Mega Gyarados EX video, I've said this before, but I've gotten comments. I've got a comment, no hate on that guy, but he said using Mega Gyarados EX, he got like a, what is it, like an 8 win streak. And I mean, that could happen, yeah. But the thing is, the decks you're going up against in casual battle isn't reflected on rank battles. That's something to kind of note. Hence why, again, Mega Gyarados is just basically dead in arrival, in my opinion. But yeah, very straightforward. My opponent essentially gave me the win. Okay. Red card. Why not? But yeah, that's the weekly meta report. That's the video, guys. Hopefully you guys did enjoy. Make sure to like and subscribe because I really do enjoy making these videos. And yeah, very excited to see how the meta shifts for the foreseeable future. Is it going to be more Suicune EX Greninja dominated? Is the Decidueye going to come back? Going to make a little comeback after this kind of looking kind of like a one-hit wonder? Only time will tell. But yeah, that's the video, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. And I'll see you guys on my next video. I'm losing my voice. Holy crap. Peace.